Welcome to the Bret Boone podcast. I am Bret Boone, and today on the program, I'm excited about this one. I'm joined by Bally Sports Ohio. She broadcasts for the Reds, Annie Sabo. She's been covering the Reds for a while now, and she's the daughter of one of my favorite all-time teammates. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Annie Sabo to the program.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. How is Pops doing? All right, for those of you watching the Bret Boone podcast, her father is Chris Sabo, who I was teammates with very briefly, 1996, but he left a lasting impression on me. How is Pops doing?
He's good. So my husband and I built a house 5 minutes from my dad here in Sarasota. So that's been great seeing him every single day. Injury wise, Bret, I think, when you've played baseball for so long, it's like every single week the body breaks down in some different fashion. His shoulder is giving him fits. That's the latest injury he's dealing with, which is preventing him from playing golf down here in Florida. So other than the shoulder, he's been doing good. The shoulder, the foot, new week, different injury for my dad. But other than that, he's doing great.
Tell him I said hi. We had a laugh on social media because of that clip that was going around in the 1990 when he's accepting it on stage. If that's not Spuds to a T, Chris Sabo, the guy I know, there's nobody like him. You know that. You're his daughter. You know what he's like. But that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun watching that. Oh, I can't get enough of Chris. Okay, let's get to the Cincinnati Reds. Task at hand. Coming out of the season this year, I was dead wrong. I talked about how strong the American League West was going to be, the American League East was going to be, but I said American League Central, National League Central, weakest divisions of baseball. They're playing pretty good baseball. So I was wrong coming out of the gate. What do you think being in Cincinnati on the ground on a daily basis, spring training coming in? What were the expectations headed into this year? They're coming off 7 losses in a row. And where are they at now?
I think the expectations coming into this season was to win an NL Central Division title. Unfortunately, we're in the midst of this 7-game losing streak, which has not been fun to watch. The offense has gone off the rails. They can't score any runs, which has been, painful this last week or so for Cincinnati. But the expectations still in the midst of this losing streak is to compete and at least, push for a division title. This division, you were right. I had a feeling it was going to be a bit more competitive than maybe you originally had thought. But you come into the season, the Brewers lost a whole lot of starting pitching, right? The Cardinals didn't necessarily gain all that much. Their starting rotation was old. Meanwhile, the Cubs didn't necessarily change all that much. And the Pirates, although they were off to that hot start like they did last year, have kind of, gone down to the wayside a little bit. They're not as much of a threat. But this division is a lot more competitive than I think a lot of people had thought. I think this Reds team really believes that they will be, competing for a playoff spot down the stretch, although things have to turn rather quickly. Hopefully that starts this afternoon when the Reds face the Diamondbacks. So rough stretch right now, but they do believe they have the talent. They have the starting pitching to contend for a division title. It's just a little rough right now.
Yeah, I was there 3 or 4 weeks ago. Actually, I was looking for you, and we couldn't end up hooking up, but I was there doing a meet and greet. I did some Reds Museum stuff about 3-4 weeks ago, and hopes were high. I mean, I was in the stadium. It's the second time I've been there. It just seemed the buzz amongst the fans and the people I were talking to. They're going, all right, it's been a while, but I think this team's ready to make the turn. I know a big blow coming out of spring training was the McLean kid. I heard nothing but really good things about him, the second baseman. He's going to miss. Is he going to miss the entire season?
Well, as of right now, as of last week, actually, McLean was going to have a doctor's appointment to see where he was at in terms of when he could return. As of right now, it's kind of looking like mid to late August for his return, but that's best case scenario.
Right.
Manager David Bell expects McLean to be, with the Reds in August. However, I don't want anyone to quote me on that because that could change day to day, but McLean is expected to join the team on this upcoming road trip out on the West Coast. But So yeah, August for McLean ish. I hope that's the case. Obviously, if the Reds are out of playoff contention, I don't think he would play this season, but hopefully the Reds are in it still and he can join the team at second base.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about him. I haven't had a chance to see him play. You also added Montas to that rotation. Obviously, a few years ago was with the Oakland A's where he had his success. He was with the Yankees. He
Mhm.
missed the entire season pretty much with the Yankees a year ago. Came over. He's done a nice job. And I look at the starting rotation with Green at the top of the rotation. This is the young kid from years ago that the Reds have had high hopes on, high hopes for. He's growing up a little bit. He's starting to pitch. He's pitching pretty good. Abbott, Ashcroft, Montas. Talk about the starting rotation a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a strength to begin the season. Our long, lanky lefty Nick Lodolo was out. He joined the rotation. He's been a huge asset, as has Frankie Montas. Frankie Montas probably one of the most entertaining people to speak to in the clubhouse. I mean, ask him one question, he'll talk to you for 30 minutes. He's awesome in that regard. But I think so far, short sample size, Hunter Green has been excellent. He's starting today. He's coming off, back-to-back scoreless outings. Short term, he's really made great strides with the fastball. This rotation is extremely young outside of Montas. So I think, last year they dealt with so many injuries. This year they've been healthier, and it really has been a strength of this team. That's why I am hopeful that if this team can get back hitting, I think they will be very competitive in this NL Central division. They have starting pitching, they have the relievers. It's just a matter of getting this offense going. But rotation, young, very talented. We have some lefties in there, and we added a whole lot of left-handed talent in the bullpen as well. So it's kept Cincinnati in games. Has it been excellent tops of the league? No, but starting pitching has been good enough for the Reds to snap out of this 7-game losing streak that they're in right now.
And I look, Cincinnati, the ballpark there, it's always going to be a challenge pitching wise. Ball
Yeah.
flies. The bullpen's doing a decent job. They're in the middle of the pack. They're eighth in the National League. So doing their job. It comes down to this offense, and I look up and down this offense, and I'm thinking going forward for this season, for the next 4.5 months, who's
Mhm.
going to be the guy that steps up? Obviously, De La Cruz from a uh, talent perspective. I couldn't imagine if this kid one day puts it all together what he could do. He could be an Aaron Judge type player with speed. A guy
Mhm.
that's, right now I think he's on pace to steal 80 or 90 bags. Um, I look at Steer. I think Steer's a good player. Candelaria hasn't got off to a great start.
Mhm.
Benson last night. I watched the game last night. It's kind of the epitome of what the Reds are going through right now. Benson comes up, pinch hitting, runner on third, less than two, tie the game, strikes out. He's had a rough run. I think he's 0 for his last 15. But
Mhm.
going forward for this Reds team, being there on a daily basis, where's the offense going to come from?
I think they got a really nice boost in TJ Friedel. He's the best defender that Cincinnati has in center field, but he's coming off of a wrist fracture. He had surgery. He joined the team just this week. I think, long term, he's going to be a huge piece in this offense. Had a great season last year, hit close to 300. Defensively, I mean, his skills off the charts. But I think this team is in need of something in the clubhouse to get him going. And I think TJ Friedel is that. He's the best vocal leader on this team. And I think that him, getting intertwined with this offense for, the past, gosh, it's been 2 or 3 games is going to be a huge boost. Not only, at the plate, but just he is, the loudest person in the dugout, loudest person in the clubhouse. I think he's going to be huge. And I'd also like to see Jonathan India step up because he is also one of the best leaders on this team. Offensively, not his best year so far, but I think if he starts to turn things around and really get hitting, I think this team feeds off of the Jonathan Indias, the TJ Friedels on this team. And I think I look to those two guys to get it going.
Early in the season, I got a chance to sit down with David Bell, as a teammate of mine in 2001, in my Seattle years. And David had, he was in because David's a different cat. He's one of my favorite teammates I've ever had, but he's close to the vest. But I could see when I was talking to him, he felt good about the personalities in that clubhouse. Annie, I played this game a long time, and for the longest time, I didn't believe in that clubhouse, that chemistry. I just thought you get the best players and you go out there and you kick the crap out of your opponent. That's what I always thought until the early 2000s with the Seattle Mariners. We had something different in that clubhouse that I've never seen before. And it's not that we were best friends with, there was a lot of guys. This game of baseball. It's famous for being, well, we go to battle every night for 3 hours and then we pick our friends and we go home and we hang out who we want to hang out with. But when you get a group of guys that really enjoys being around each other, it does make a difference. I think something like that. I think there's some credence to those words that chemistry can be uh, a part that in when everything else seems to be equal, it can put you over the top. David seemed to think, and even the Stowe brothers that have been there for years that run the clubhouse down there, they kept telling me, Booney, we got a really good group of kids here, really good group of guys. And, it's still early. I'm looking at what are they, 5.5 out? No, they're
I
five
think,
out, 5 games out,
yeah.
5 games out as we tape this podcast. Um, but it's not like I remember those times when you lose 7 in a row and you're looking around and you're like, is it ever going to end? Especially you lose a nail biter last night.
Yeah.
It seems like it's never going to end, but the sun's going to come up tomorrow. And when you look at it right now, we're not even to the middle of May and we're only 5 out. A lot of games to go.
Yeah. And I think, you kind of touched on one of the strengths of this team in the chemistry. I mean, I've worked for a lot of teams in my day. This is one of the coolest clubhouses I've ever been a part of. No one is what I like to say a diva in the clubhouse. Everyone is really cool to work with. I mean, for us, which is huge, but I mean, these guys hang out with each other outside of, coming to work every single day. Their families are so close. During the stretch, I mean, they're cheerleaders for each other inside the dugout. And I think that's going to go a long, long way. There's no one's selfish either, even from a starting pitching rotation. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like pitchers and position players can be different. I think that pitchers, in a sense, can be kind of not as involved in the offense. You know what I mean? At sometimes. But this team is so close and pulling for each other, whether it's the starting pitchers pulling for the offense or, vice versa. And I think that's something that once this team snaps out of this 7-game losing streak is invaluable. It makes our job easy and a lot more fun to come to the ballpark every single day. And like I said, I've worked with other organizations in my lifetime, and the chemistry and closeness of this group in the clubhouse is something that I, as a reporter, haven't experienced before, which is really fun for me.
Yeah, it makes your job a lot easier, especially when you got to go down
It
there.
does. And it really does.
Because, I remember as a player, I felt an obligation, especially in my later years where I was a veteran on the team. Felt an obligation that you guys come down, you have your work to do.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when you lose 7 in a row, the last thing Annie Sabo wants to do is come put a microphone in my mouth, in my face, and say, "What's wrong?" That's the last thing. But you've got a job to do too. You need to do this. You don't want to do it. I don't want to answer the question, but I think it's a professional courtesy that this is the way it is. And I always tried to extend that, rain or shine, good, bad, ugly. Of course, when I was 0 for 4 and we just lost 5 in a row, I don't want to talk to the press, but I felt it was my obligation um, to get that done. So it's good to hear that there's a bunch of good guys there, really, kind of make your job a little bit easier because over 162, it gets long and everything's not, it's not all roses. Some days are great and some streaks are great months. It's easy to go down there when you just won 6 to 7 and the guy you're going to interview just coming off a 4-hit day. That's a perfect storm, but that doesn't happen on a daily basis. 162. It's a long season.
Yeah.
Um, All right, let's get to the division. We got Milwaukee and the Cubs at the top of the division.
Mhm.
What do you see so far with the Milwaukee Brewers? You talked earlier about Burns moving
Yeah.
on. Possibly, he's gonna win. He's definitely in the Cy Young talk already early in the season. One of the best pitchers in baseball. He moved on. Craig Counsell went to the Cubs, and everybody's talk at the beginning of the season. Well, this might be the end of Milwaukee's run because they've done a great job of getting to that postseason. Talk on Milwaukee.
Yeah, I think, doing all my research and prep prior to the season, in all honesty, I did not think Milwaukee was going to be a huge threat. I kind of foresaw them being middle of the pack in the Central. However, I am very surprised. I mean, Corbin Burns, great. But I remember when Milwaukee came to Cincinnati, I was really impressed with their young offense. I mean, they were firing quite literally on all cylinders when we played them. Really impressed with the young talent the Brewers have offensively, and their, starting pitching has been, excellent, something that I didn't necessarily foresee. So yeah, I mean, the Brewers, it's kind of business as usual with them having won the Central last year. I'm a little bit more surprised that they're leading the division than I was, say, a year ago.
Yeah, they're at they're top in the league, not number one, but in the top third of the league in all offensive categories. Number three in pitching,
Mhm.
bullpen's 10th. But I look at this team. You got a Terang, interesting young player, really good player. Yelich, former MVP. I don't
Mhm.
know what happened to Yelich in the last 3 or 4 years, but all of a sudden he's playing really well again.
Mhm.
Contreras has been outstanding, and that pitching that pitching staff is holding up. I get to a point here like with the Tampa Bays of the world. How
Yeah.
do they do it year in and year out? With the turnover and
Mhm.
great players are coming and they're going. And you look at Tampa Bay and half the time I can't name their 25-man roster. I know about a quarter of them. But year in and year out, they're knocking at the door. They're getting to the postseason. The only thing they haven't done is win a World Series. But they compete. I'm starting to think there's some sort of culture that goes on. I'm looking at the Milwaukee Brewers
Mhm.
in the same breath, year in and year out. You never think, the Milwaukee Brewers. No one ever says, oh, the Brewers are going to win the World Series. But it seems like year in and year out, they're knocking on the door and they're always getting to that postseason, getting a seat at the table. Not
Yeah.
not not disappointing this year.
I will say in Tampa, though, I feel like their player development staff was excellent. I did my second TV job was in Tampa with a local NBC affiliate. Their player development staff and Kevin Cash, they do a great job in Tampa Bay. So props to them for, really making sure these players, whoever they are, every single year are ready to go out there and play. But I really think it's just their development staff and the fact that Kevin Cash does a great job of managing his group in Tampa. So I will say that.
Yeah, and I think it's a culture. I think when people go to Tampa Bay and they show up for spring training, they walk through those doors. The feeling is, no, we go to the postseason here. Not, oh, we're going to fight for a playoff spot. And I hear that a lot. It's no, we're going to go to the postseason. It's just a matter how far, and is this the year that we go all the way? It's interesting the dynamic there, but I'm over the top impressed year in and year out with them. Okay, move on to the Cubs. Another team I thought was going to be, they're going to be a little bit better. They went out and they signed Bellinger. Uh, Imanaga's been unbelievable. Tyon, who was a cast off from the New York Yankees,
Mhm.
been great in that rotation. And Justin Steele, he's just coming back now. He was the Cy Young candidate a year ago. Kyle Hendricks, who's been a mainstay in that rotation for a lot of years, he's off to a rough start. He's hurt. He's on the IL. But with Steele coming back and what they've got going already in that starting rotation, they're going to be tough. Offense, I think they're going to be challenged,
Yeah.
but they've got some pretty good players. You got Dansby Swanson at shortstop. I mentioned Bellinger coming over from signing this free agent deal this offseason. Tauchman, you've got some good players, but that starting rotation and that bullpen looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think, again, I didn't expect the Cubs to be where they are in the Central right now. I just thought that I didn't think the starting rotation was going to be as good as it is right now. However, I'm surprised if they've been awesome, just because their offense, yes, they have superstar power, but I really wasn't thoroughly impressed last year. But yeah, I mean, their pitching staff has been excellent. The Reds haven't played the Cubs yet, so I haven't really done a deep dive into, their season statistics as of yet. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a matter, of starting pitching health. And if the starters in Chicago and, their relievers stay healthy down the stretch, I think they could contend with the Brewers to potentially win it. However, if I had my choice right now, I think the Brewers look too strong to potentially, repeat and win the Central again. However, I'm rooting for the Reds, but I think the Brewers that would be my pick right now if I had to pick who was to win the Central.
You round out the division with the Pittsburgh Pirates, who a year ago started off great, kind of a teaser. They did the
Yeah.
same thing this year. And something we're not used to in that Central Division is St. Louis being the bottom dwellers. I mean, that's very rare for St. Louis. Talk about a culture and talk about a history year in and year out. It seems like they're always fighting at the end for the top of that division. Last year, they finished in the basement. They're in the basement again. Is there anything to talk about when it comes to the Pittsburgh Pirates, St. Louis Cardinals for 2024?
I think, I think St. Louis will probably finish in the bottom of the Central. I think their rotation is too quote unquote old. I mean, you have Sonny Gray in that rotation, who's obviously been, excellent, had a great career in Cincinnati. I don't think they're as exciting to talk about as the Pittsburgh Pirates. Paul Skeens making his starting pitching debut with the Pirates here shortly. I think the Pirates are young and talented, and like the Reds in a couple years are going to be great. I think they started off the year really successful, and you got a taste of what they can do when the starting pitching is there, when they're young, talented, hitting prospects. I mean, O'Neal Cruz. I mean, you have so many guys who are young, who are talented on that roster in Pittsburgh. So I think Pittsburgh, like Cincinnati in the next couple of years, are going to be serious playoff contenders. And I think the Pirates I'm more excited about to watch the next couple of years as I am to see, how Cincinnati is next year or, 2 years down the line. So I think, with the addition of Paul Skeens and, a lot of the young hitting prospects in Pittsburgh, that's more sexy to talk about than the Cardinals are right now. But I mean, yeah, I mean, overall, I just think this division has become a lot more competitive, and people are talking about it a lot more than maybe people had thought about heading out of spring training.
No, I agree with you. I think it has been, and I think the one thing Pittsburgh can do, and you mentioned the addition of Skeens, who's toured
Mhm.
up in the minor league so far. They can pitch. They've
Yeah,
got some young, talented pitching. They're right now hovering at the top of the National League, but
yeah.
they can pitch. They're legitimate. All right. I think fans out there wonder, for somebody that gets to watch it on a daily basis. I watch it from afar.
Mm-hmm.
Elly De La Cruz, a phenomenon. I don't know what he is, 6'7", playing
Yeah,
shortstop.
6'6". Mm-hmm.
In my day, Cal Ripken was considered an anomaly. He's so big. How does he play shortstop? Guys like me played short. The 5'10" guys on a good day, 5'10". Uh, we played short. We played second base. That's the way we were. It's a different ball game in 2024. These kids today coming up, they're bigger. They're just. I walk into a clubhouse now, and I've never felt tall, but it's like, wow, these guys are getting bigger than they've ever been. I'm watching a 6'6", 6'7" shortstop runs like the wind. He's got 19 bags out of the gate. He's still learning. He's a young man. He's got light tower power. Seems like a really good kid. He's got the look. He's got that. If he one day finds it and he puts it all together, he's got that rock star appeal. He's the cover of the media guide. He's got the personality to go with it. Tell the audience what it's like watching an Elly De La Cruz and that level of talent on a daily basis.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's electric. And I know we use that word so often when we talk about Elly De La Cruz, but I mean, it truly is. Every time he steps into the batter's box, there's Elly chants at Great American Ballpark. I mean, it is just it's a gift for me to watch every single day. And I tell him that because his English has gotten so good that we can actually communicate him without a translator this year. And man, I mean, offensively going through a little bit of a slump. We know he can steal bases like no one talks about. But yes, if he can figure out how to be a little bit more consistent and be more disciplined at the plate, which we have seen throughout the course of this season. I mean, I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. But on the field, flashy, has the swagger that everyone talks about. Off the field in the clubhouse, he's probably the quietest, most reserved, humble player that I've interacted with. Keeps to himself, is very grounded off the field, but it's just like once he steps on the field, he's a different person and elevates his game completely, changes his personality, but off the field, just kind, easy to talk to, humble. But yeah, I feel blessed to watch him play the game of baseball because he is just, when he's hitting and stealing the bases that he does at will, I mean, he's the most fun player to watch right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I didn't take it when you compare a player to like an Aaron Judge type player. I don't take that lightly. It's a little bit unfair almost from an offensive perspective, but I just look at the skill set. And like I said, Aaron Judge with wheels that could steal 80 bags. I mean, I think yet last year with the new rules, and I go back and forth on the new rules. I kind of like them. It encourages people to start stealing bases again and playing baseball the way it was played 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So it's encouraging base stealing. Yes, is base stealing easier right now? Absolutely. But you can only disengage twice from the rubber, and there's timeouts and there's a pitch clock. I think the Ricky Hendersons of the world be licking their chops right now if
Mm-hmm.
those were the rules when they played. Nevertheless, I watch this kid and it's impressive, and I just keep hoping one day if he puts it all together, the sky's the limit. I mean, he can put up years, historical type years, and it's got to be a lot of fun to watch this kid develop on
Oh,
a daily basis.
so much fun. Like I said, I mean, just the chance he gets when he steps up to the plate, it's truly unbelievable. It's like he is a superstar in Cincinnati. He truly is, and all the national attention that he's gotten this year hasn't gotten to him. I mean, I spoke to him last week, and something at that I think I shared on the broadcast a couple of weeks ago, but he said the biggest difference for him was last year he didn't have any type of routine. Talking to my dad, he had the same routine every single day for night
Mhm.
games, for day games, for away games, for home games. Elly said last year he didn't have a routine. This year he's finally, developed a routine that works for him. He's the first person at the ballpark, the last one to leave. And he said that Joey Votto taught him the importance of having a routine last year. He said he talks to Joey sometimes this season, but not all that much as he did last year. But I found that to be really interesting.
Yeah, guy. I mean, we all have guys. We get to the big leagues. We have guys
Mhm.
we look to and like to guide us. All right, what works for you? Uh, where have you drawn your success from? And it's true. There's a lot of guys out there, the veteran guys that can really help a young player. I had guys when I came up that I really leaned on, and they took me through the fire. They showed me the ropes. Sometimes some tough love, sometimes some good love, but nevertheless, it's a learning process, and we all have to. In this game, you got to fall down. You got to get your butt kicked, and the guys that brush themselves off and get up are the guys that have long lasting careers. Um,
Yes.
I want to talk about Cincinnati. It was a little bit different when I played there. I played there from
Mhm.
1994 through 98. I got to
Mhm.
play with your dad one year, 1996, and this is the end of his run. He wasn't an everyday player for us on that particular team. He was a twice a week guy. I've got a couple stories I want to share with you. I'm sure you have a lot more than I do. But what do you remember those years at all? I know you were just a little kid, but do you remember those years at all?
So yeah, in '96 I was 4. I was born in '92, so after the World Series win.
Right.
So unfortunately, everyone always asks me this, like, what memories do I have? I honestly don't remember my dad playing at all. I remember for example, I remember going to like kids camp with players' kids and playing and sharing bags of Doritos and running on the field and things like that. But I don't remember game action whatsoever,
No.
unfortunately. Um, I just can see, the highlight tapes and things like that. But sadly, no, I don't remember much.
Yeah, and your dad, he was a great player. I mean, he was the rookie of the year. He's a three-time All-Star, World Series in 1990, where they swept that the Bash Brothers and the Oakland A's. Awesome team. And I came right after that, and I came there in 1994. So a lot of that team was still intact. Some guys were moving on, but I got a little bit of a feeling, and in the end, my days in Seattle, I got to play for Lou for a long time, who's to this day one of my favorite men in the world. Um, does Dad still listen to Tom Jones?
Oh my gosh, probably. My dad has like the weirdest taste in music because, as I'm sure you know, he listens to music that was popular 20 years before he was born. Still does. Listens to Frank Sinatra. I mean, his taste of music is he listens to everything from, I kid you not, Frank Sinatra to Eminem. And it is the weirdest mix of all time.
Believe me, I'm a young kid. I get traded to the Cincinnati Reds. This is after the '93 season. I'm in Seattle. I come to the Reds. So, I'm a young player, and I'm like, oh, I got to prove myself all over again in the National League.
Yeah.
And a buddy of mine, Hal Morris, is the first baseman, and he's got a ton of Chris Sabo stories through the years. Him and Paul O'Neill, who I know your dad and Paul O'Neill are best of friends.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing all these stories coming in about Spuds, the infamous Spuds with the goggles. And I'll remember one of my earliest memories of your dad is I walk into this clubhouse, this young kid, and he's sitting in his locker. He's got a record player, and that's why I mentioned Tom Jones. And it's this song, and I bet you've heard him say it. He's snapping his fingers, and he's going, "It's not
Yeah.
unusual to be loved by you." Do you know what I'm talking
By
about?
anyone. Oh
It's
yeah.
unbelievable. And he's sitting in his locker. He doesn't know I'm there watching him. So he's not putting on a show. He's just really listening to a vinyl record,
Uh-huh.
snapping his fingers, singing to Tom Jones.
Oh yeah. I mean, even driving. I mean, I grew up in Cincinnati when we had CDs and cassette players back in the day. He would play those songs. I mean, we never had a choice of what we wanted to listen to when my dad drove us to school. It was always what he wanted to listen to, and so we would listen to Tom Jones, Frank Sinatra, like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. When we were, oh gosh, 6 years old, 8 years old, it was always like, what CD dad is going to pick from the basement? And it would be a surprise every single day on the ride to school. So I know of all these older musicians and singers because my dad had such a unique taste in music.
He's unbelievable. I'm going to share one story with you, and then I'm going to ask you to give me a story that I might not know about.
Okay.
Okay. And I don't remember. You're probably too young for this too. This is back when the Astrodome was there. It wasn't the new ballpark in Houston. It was the old Astrodome.
Okay.
When you go to the Astrodome as a player,
Mhm.
the second floor is where the clubhouse is. Now, once the gates open, okay, when we get there early and we're going onto the field before the gates are open, you can walk down steps right from the clubhouse to the field. It'll take you about 7 seconds on a nice brisk walk. Now, once the gates open, the fans are there. You're not going to walk through the crowd. Okay, this is like the crowd going down to the best seats right behind home plate. So we would use that if we were there early, going on, to hit early or whatever. If not, the normal route was this long, windy, and it's a famous place. This long, windy staircase, and there's black cats, and that's how you get to the dugout. But it takes you about 45 seconds. And that's how we go to the dugout. That's how we
Mhm.
come back up to the clubhouse after the game. So Chris he's not starting that game. He ends up coming in late in the game. And this is how I remember the story. Your dad might remember it differently, but I like telling it this way because it's really good. So they call on Spuds and said, by the way, for those listening, Spuds is Chris's nickname. He's got a pinch hit.
Mhm.
Your dad's used to pinch hitting at this stage of his career. Grabs a bat. I think I was on deck, and I remember him getting a 3-1 count and hitting a bomb. It would tie the game. I think Eric Gregg is behind the plate. He calls it foul. It was fair. We didn't have replays back then. And your
Mhm.
dad, you know how he is. He's talking under his breath. He goes, "That's fair. Damn it, the ball's fair. The ball's fair. The ball." He ends up going to a 3-2 count, pops it straight up. Another great swing.
Uh-huh.
But he's thinking, "You just took a home run away from me, and now I'm out." He comes past me on the on deck circle, jumps into the crowd, and walks to the locker room, and there's probably 30,000 people in the crowd. Walks through the crowd in his spikes to get to the and now this is the ninth inning, to get to the clubhouse. We end up going 1, 2, 3. We end up losing the game. We take our long walk through that, up the back corridor, through the steps, past the black cats, and we get back to the clubhouse. I walk in, I'm looking for your dad because I want to tell him, Spuds, that was fair.
Mhm.
I see a pile of clothes in front of his locker. And I said, I asked the clubby, I said, where'd Spuds go? He goes, oh, he left. By the time he made his out, that was the second out of the inning. And the next guy made the out. It might have been me to end the game. By the time I gathered my bats and walked to the clubhouse, your dad was undressed, gone. Didn't see him till the next day. That's what those are the story, and that's just one. He did this all the time. But when players from my generation and people that know the Astrodome, when I tell them this story, they're like, "No way he went through the crowd." I said he literally jumped into the crowd in his spikes and ran past. I mean, the people had to be like, "What is going on here?"
If there's one thing about my dad, when he's done with something, he's out. He's leaving. He's not saying
Oh,
goodbye to anyone. He's done.
nope, he's done. He is.
And I'm not surprised. I actually have not heard that story before.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I've heard everybody hears the Burger King story in Tampa long before you were born when he's working on he's a Cincinnati Reds about to win a World Series, but on the side he's making a little cash at Burger King in Tampa. We've had that story. All right, give me a story you think that I would enjoy that I don't know.
Oh gosh. I mean, there's plenty, but I think one of the funniest things that repeatedly happened with my sisters and I growing up, we played sports. I played soccer growing up, and then we switched over to tennis because I personally got too many concussions in soccer. Maybe that's why I'm weird now. But we were playing tennis, and my dad, like watching us play sports, was a nervous wreck. Um, and so we're playing these tennis matches, and my dad, I kid you not, would either hide behind like a bush, a tree, somewhere where we could never see him. Because he would, if we lost a tennis point or whatever, he would be upset and make a gesture. So I think he always tried to hide behind bushes and things like that. My sister was playing a doubles match, and I believe the team they were playing was cheating or something. So my dad climbed up the rungs. It was like a tennis facility, there's, wind screens. He climbed to the very top of this like metal rung, is sitting on top of the metal rung. So both my sister and her doubles partner and the other team can see that he's watching and can see that these girls are calling the ball out when it should be in. And my sister, I think I was watching too, and I was just like, I'm not even surprised. We're so used to it. My sister said they were getting a drink of water. They were switching sides on the court. And her doubles partner was like, who's that weird guy like sitting on top of the fence outside of the tennis facility? And my sister, unfazed, was just like, oh yeah, that's just my dad. That's how he likes to watch the matches.
Don't
And she
worry
just
about him.
yeah, she was just like, oh, you didn't know that? And just went over to the other side. But he wanted to make sure everyone knew that he saw that they were cheating. But it was funny because one, he usually was so removed from our matches or soccer games because one, he doesn't want to talk to anyone because that's most important and doesn't want to
Right.
be bothered. And two, he just didn't want us to see him. But that story, I just remember being there and being so unfazed that my dad did something so bizarre in response to the other team cheating. And my sisters, my mom, and I were just so unfazed by it. I think that's a really good one because it just shows that my dad is my dad. He's still the same now than he was when he was playing. He's quite honestly never changed. He's had the same hairstyle since I was born. He's had the same clothing items for probably my entire life. I mean, his closet has not, it's perfectly organized. He has the same clothes that he's had forever. Hasn't really bought a fancy car ever, just goes about his business same way he always has, but does it a little bit differently than maybe a normal individual.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if Chris changed at all. And
No.
a lot of fun stories about your dad, but really a great player and a really good man. And it's funny to hear you talk about it with you and your mom and your sisters because it's like most kids you'd think, oh, they're going to be embarrassed. Dad, quit humiliating me. You guys were like, you know what? That's just dad. That's just the way he rolls. Move on. What's next? And that's he has that effect though. He has that effect on it's just Sabo. It's just Spuds. It's
Yeah,
just
I think
there's nothing
I
more you can say.
when I married my husband a few years ago, I just had to tell him, I was like, my dad's not, he's not weird. He just has a different way of going about things. So
Right.
one, don't be offended. And two, if he doesn't talk to you, that doesn't mean he doesn't like you. Like
Yeah.
he's just a little bit different. And
He's
he's a
awesome.
great dad. He just goes about things differently. And because my husband is very social and very chatty. And I was like, my dad's probably not going to talk as much to you, but he still likes you. Don't worry.
Yeah. As far as you know, he likes you.
Yeah,
Hopefully he likes you.
exactly. As far as we know.
All right. Last thing, and I'll let you get out of here. I saw you tweeted about it the other day. You said you had a little downtime because I'm fascinated with this. And I think I'm going to have Drew Bledsoe come on next week to talk about it. You said, all right, I got some downtime. I'm going to watch the Brady roast. I was playing golf and I just was getting clips on social media. I couldn't take my eyes off it. So now I'm in the middle of watching the whole thing, but I've seen an hour and a half of just clips of the individuals. What'd you think of the roast?
Oh, I thought it was great. I'm still okay. I didn't realize it was 3 hours long, so I am still in the midst of it too. Because I thought, it was going to be an hour, but Nikki Glazer, hilarious.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. I didn't even know this roast was going on. I was working the Reds game that night when I guess the night it premiered. So I had no idea it was going on. But I think Tom, for agreeing to do this, is, I mean, unbelievable. I never thought in a million years that he would agree to do a roast like this for 3
Unbelievable.
hours. But I mean, again, I mean, I love Tom Brady. I thought watching him play football was one of the highlights of my life. I'm a football girl in addition to baseball. He was here in Tampa. I mean, I'm in Sarasota now, but I lived in Tampa for years. I mean, having him come and play for the Bucks, again, it was the most fun couple of years in Tampa on Sundays that, I mean, I'll remember that for the rest of my life. So having him in Tampa and, watching him play for so many years was awesome. But now that, he's willing to do all these roasts and we're getting to see some more bits and pieces of his personality. Awesome. But yeah, Nikki Glazer so far has been my favorite. I want to finish the second hour and a half, hopefully this week. But I mean, unreal.
And the way I saw Tom's finish, I thought he did great. And I
Yeah.
heard he really prepared for it. But I thought he did great kind of beating back everybody that was wearing him out all night. I don't think Giselle's very happy right now, but I don't think Tom's too worried about that. You know what I thought it was good for? I thought it was good just all the crazy stuff that's been going on in the world. It's like it was just a fun night where we could just make fun of everything and everybody and nobody was pissed off and offended. I thought at the beginning though, I'm going, no way he's going there. Nikki Glazer, some of the things she said, and you got to watch it. People out there that haven't seen it. It's one of the funniest shows I think, and probably he's going to be one of the all-time most successful shows in the history of Netflix.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And that's why I work in sports because it's not controversial, it's fun, it's entertaining for people amidst, the craziness of the world. So agreed. I think roasts like that and just working in sports gives people a break from their day-to-day troubles. And that's why I like sports. And that's why I think, working in baseball is just awesome.
Very cool. Well, Annie Sabo, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you coming on the Bret Boone podcast. For those out there, we're now on YouTube. Check us out there. For those that tune into the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep it right here. Thanks, Annie.
Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.